My sister-in-law called me a bitter bachelor and tried to ruin my credit. The revenge was sweet, but the truth about my ex-fiancé and my brother destroyed our family. My entitled sister-in-law thought my lack of children meant my bank account belonged to her, going as far as committing identity theft when I finally cut her off. But the real reason she felt so insanely entitled to my life wasn't just greed. It was a sick, twisted blackmail scheme covering up the fact that my own brother had slept with my fiancée right before our wedding. Original post. My brother and sister-in-law genuinely believe it is my moral obligation to fund their lifestyle simply because I am single and don't have kids. My phone buzzed on a random Wednesday afternoon while I was sitting in my downtown Chicago office, desperately trying to look busy at my desk. I swear, it was like the universe had downloaded my work schedule just to mess with my blood pressure. The message preview popped up on my screen, and it wasn't from my boss, a client, or anybody who actually pays my rent. It was from my brother, Mark's wife, Brenda. She used that fake, sugary-sweet tone she always weaponizes, like a cheap vanilla-scented candle, desperately trying to cover up the smell of raw sewage and manipulation. "Hey, babe," it started. "Let me be clear. Brenda has never called me babe in person. Not once in the 8 years she's been haunting my family. Quick question. Quick questions from Brenda are never quick. They are like those tiny, almost invisible cracks in a car windshield that violently shatter into a massive spiderweb the second you hit a pothole. I didn't answer right away. I had already answered her the week before, and the week before that. It was getting to the point where my brain would just hear her name, and my shoulders would instinctively tense up, bracing for financial impact. For context, I'm Liam. I'm 32, and I work in financial planning at a mid-sized firm. It sounds fancy until you realize it mostly means I spend my entire day telling people different versions of the word no, and then writing meticulously polite emails explaining why no is actually the most responsible answer. I am exceptionally good at setting boundaries at work. At home? With my family? Not so much. Yes, I know that's pathetic. Don't start. I live alone in a modest apartment that is constantly one broken appliance away from pure chaos. 3 years ago, my life completely derailed when my fiancée, Maya, walked out on me a month before our wedding. She left a vague, tear-stained note about not being ready and completely vanished. It broke me. I spent the last few years meticulously rebuilding a quiet, solitary life that doesn't depend on anyone else's mood swings or sudden departures. I thought I was doing fine. Then Mark married Brenda. At first, the requests were almost normal. A birthday gift for my nephew Toby. A holiday present. A little "can you chip in for his school supplies" kind of thing. I said yes because it felt harmless, and because Mark always sounded so utterly exhausted whenever he asked. Then it aggressively escalated. It turned into, "Toby really wants this, and you're so good with money, it's just a little extra." Then it mutated into Brenda, directly sending me unhinged screenshots of luxury items she wanted me to buy. It was as if she viewed me not as a human being, but as her personal, interactive ATM. And Mark? He would text me afterward, dripping in apologies and softness. "I'm sorry she came at you like that, man. She's just really stressed." He never told her to stop. He never said, "That's completely inappropriate." He just apologized like a useless umbrella in a Category 5 hurricane. When I finally opened that Wednesday message, it wasn't even a question. It was a list. Not a "would you mind" list, but a "this is happening" list. It included a premium ergonomic gaming chair, limited edition custom sneakers, top-tier wireless noise-canceling headphones, and a brand new flagship smartphone. Every single item was described with forensic precision, like she had copy-pasted it directly from a luxury catalog. Color, size, features the exact kind of premium garbage that makes you feel impoverished just reading the specs. At the very bottom, she added, "Toby has been so good lately and deserves to feel special. You're a single guy, you don't have kids, so you have the disposable income. You can help." That last sentence did something incredibly ugly to my brain. A little switch flipped in my head. Suddenly, I wasn't a 3-2-year-old man sitting in a corporate office paying my own mortgage. I was a teenager again, being told by my parents that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention I received because Mark, the golden child, needed more support. Different family drama, exact same bitter flavor. 2 days after the list was sent, my 4-year-old nephew Toby showed up at my apartment door. He looked like he would rather be standing on the surface of the sun than in my hallway, which honestly made me respect him more. He was gripping a crumpled piece of paper like it was damning evidence in a murder trial, refusing to meet my eyes. "Hey, bud," I said, trying to keep my voice normal, desperately trying not to let my boiling anger leak onto this poor kid. "You okay?" He gave the saddest, heaviest shrug I had ever witnessed. "My mom said I'm supposed to give you this." He shoved the printed list toward me like it was literally on fire. I scanned the absurd luxury items, then looked down at him. "Did you write this, Toby?" He shook his head so fast his messy hair fell over his eyes. "No. Do you even want this stuff?" I asked, keeping my tone light, though I could hear the sharp edge of frustration bleeding through. He hesitated, shifting his weight awkwardly. "I mean, I want the gaming chair, but I don't know. It's too much." He said it like he was deeply ashamed for wanting anything at all, and that completely broke something inside me. I stepped aside and ushered him in. We sat down at my small kitchen table, the cheap, wobbly one I bought from IKEA years ago because it made me feel like I had a real home, even though it shakes violently if you lean your elbows on it wrong. I poured him a glass of orange juice because I assume that's what you do when a teenager looks like he's about to have a panic attack in your kitchen. I took a deep breath. "Do you have any idea how much all of this costs, Toby?" He shrugged again, staring at his shoes. "A lot?" "Yeah, a massive amount," I said, tapping the paper. "What if we try something different?" His eyes finally flicked up to meet mine. "Like what?" "What if I teach you how to actually get what you want?" I offered gently. "Without needing your mom to make you beg your relatives for it?" He blinked at me like I was speaking ancient Latin. "I can't do that. I'm just a kid." "You're 14, I corrected him. "You're a kid who can work. I'm not saying you need to go into the coal mines. Calm down." He cracked a tiny, hesitant smile at that, which felt like a massive victory. "You can mow lawns, shovel snow, walk dogs, help the older neighbors. You can set a financial goal and make a concrete plan. It's boring and it's not glamorous, but the money will be completely yours." He stared at me, trying to calculate if this was a trick. "My mom says family just helps. Family is supposed to provide." "Family does help," I agreed, leaning forward. "But family doesn't treat you like a tool. Real family doesn't turn you into an emotional delivery service for their own greedy demands." He looked down at his hands, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She told me you wouldn't mind because you don't have a family of your own." Of course she did. I swallowed the absolute rage bubbling in my throat. I grabbed a blank notebook from my junk drawer, because I am the kind of neurotic financial planner who has fresh notebooks stashed everywhere. I drew 3 little boxes on the first page and labeled them clearly: save, spend, goal. I asked him how much money he currently had to his name. He mumbled something about making $15 here and there, mowing lawns on weekends, and occasionally getting a $5 bill for helping Mrs. Gable down the street carry her groceries. It wasn't much, but it was a foundation. "Okay," I said, tapping the goal box with my pen. "Pick one thing from this insane list that you actually, genuinely want." "The chair," he said instantly. Then his face flushed with guilt, like wanting a comfortable place to sit was a federal crime. "Cool," I said, writing it down. "Then we figure out exactly what it costs, what you need to earn per week, and how long it'll take. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent." Toby actually leaned forward. The heavy, depressed posture vanished. He looked genuinely interested, like no adult had ever spoken to him, as if he were a capable human being. That's what completely shifted my perspective. My anger at Brenda mutated into something cold, hard, and laser-focused. Because the core problem wasn't that a teenager wanted nice things. The problem was that his mother was actively using him as a psychological pawn to extort me, and my entire family was acting like this was standard operating procedure. 5 minutes after Toby left my apartment with his new financial notebook, my phone violently vibrated. It was Brenda. "So," she snapped the absolute millisecond I answered the call. No hello, no greeting. "Did he give you the list?" "He did," I replied, keeping my voice dangerously flat. "Great," she said, her tone dripping with smug satisfaction, acting like the transaction was finalized. "When can you order it? I want it delivered before Friday." "I'm not ordering any of it, Brenda," I said, feeling the temperature in my own voice drop to absolute zero. I offered to help Toby learn how to earn the money for the chair himself. There was a deafening pause on the line. It was the specific kind of silence where you can vividly picture someone's face contorting into pure rage. "Are you seriously doing this right now?" she hissed. "Yeah," I said smoothly. "I'm completely serious." "You think you're his father now?" she screamed into the receiver. "You think you get to teach my son life lessons just because you have some pathetic little desk job playing with spreadsheets all day? Because no woman wants to marry you?" That hit a raw, agonizing nerve. My chest tightened at the jab about my failed engagement, but I refused to let her hear me bleed. Yes, my job is spreadsheets, but it's also my life, and I've worked incredibly hard to get here. I get to decide what I do with my own money. And frankly, Toby deserves respect, not to be used as your beggar. "He deserves gifts," she shrieked, her voice echoing painfully in my ear. "He is a child. He shouldn't have to work like a dog for everything." "He doesn't," I shot back. "But he also shouldn't have to beg for things that you secretly want to sell online for a profit." Dead silence. I hadn't even consciously planned to say it. It just erupted out of me, sharp and ugly. I had seen her Facebook Marketplace history. I knew her game. And the heavy silence on her end confirmed everything. "What did you just say to me?" she asked, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I said what I said," I repeated, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "I am not buying a single item on that absurd list. Not unless you pay me back first." "What?" she barked, feigning absolute confusion. "Pay you back for what?" "For the loan, Brenda," I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline. "The $4,000 you begged me for last year. The money you swore you'd pay back in 2 months to fix your car. It's been over 14 months. She actually laughed. It wasn't a humorous laugh. It was the chilling, arrogant laugh of a narcissist who has never faced a single consequence in her entire life. "That wasn't a loan, Liam. That was family helping family. You're single. You don't need it." "Funny," I retorted, "because you literally wrote the word loan in the text message, which I still have backed up to my cloud. You're really going to do this?" She shifted instantly into professional victim mode, her voice quivering with fake tears. "Over money? You're going to deliberately punish an innocent child because you're a bitter, lonely bachelor who got left at the altar?" I swallowed hard. I absolutely hated that she possessed the exact emotional cheat codes to make me feel like the villain with a single sentence. "I'm not punishing Toby," I said firmly. "I'm setting a boundary with you. There's a massive difference. Mark is going to hear about this," she threatened, her voice dripping with malice. "Please, tell my brother," I said. "I'd love to hear his thoughts." I hung up and threw my phone onto the couch before my voice could crack. That night, Mark called me. He executed his usual routine, starting soft and hesitant. "Hey, man," he sighed into the phone. "Brenda's in tears." "Yeah, I noticed," I said dryly. He let out a long, ragged exhale. Can you just help out this one time, Liam? Toby has been begging for this stuff." "He hasn't been begging, Mark," I corrected him, striving to keep my voice perfectly steady. "Brenda has been demanding it through him." "Did you even look at the list?" "Liam," he pleaded, using that condescending tone that implied I was the difficult, unreasonable one. "Come on, it's really not that much money to you." "It's not that much to you." That exact sentence. It echoed in my skull. They treated my money like it was imaginary monopoly cash simply because I earned it without having a wife or children. Like my mortgage didn't count, my electric bill didn't matter, and my future was irrelevant because I didn't have a family portrait hanging in my living room. I felt hot tears of frustration sting the corners of my eyes, and I hated myself for showing weakness in an empty room. "It is not about the dollar amount, Mark," I practically growled. "It is about how your wife treats me. It's about how you allow her to treat me." Mark went completely quiet. The silence stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. Finally, he mumbled, "She's stressed, Liam." "I'm stressed. We're just going through a lot," I snapped. "I'm stressed every single day, Mark. I'm stressed when my property taxes go up, when my car needs a new transmission, when I'm sitting alone in this apartment wondering why my life turned out this way. And you know what I don't do? I don't send extortion lists to my relatives acting like they owe me their paychecks." He didn't answer. I could just hear his shallow breathing over the line, the vast, unbridgeable distance between us echoing like static. I hung up. Update 1. A week later, I made the colossal mistake of attending a family cookout at my parents' house in the suburbs. I lied to myself, saying it would be fine. I cannot emphasize enough how often I have gaslit my own intuition, just to maintain the fragile illusion of family peace. The backyard was swarming with relatives. I barely tolerate the kind of aunts and uncles who hug you too aggressively and immediately interrogate you about why you're still single at 32. My mother, Helen, was fluttering around the patio like a frantic hostess in a 1950s sitcom, smiling so widely it looked painful. My father, Arthur, stood defensively behind his grill, acting as if aggressive neutrality was a valid personality trait. Brenda was there, of course. She was perched on a premium patio chair like a deposed queen, glaring at everyone. Toby hovered near the drink cooler, desperately trying to blend into the siding of the house. I had barely sat down with a plate of potato salad before Brenda launched her missile. "It's just amazing to me how some people," she announced loudly, her eyes locking directly onto mine across the yard, "completely forget what it means to have a heart the second they get a little bit of money." The ambient chatter in the yard died instantly. My mother laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Oh, Brenda, let's not do this today. It's a beautiful Saturday." "I'm not doing anything, Helen," Brenda said, feigning utter innocence while scanning the audience. "I'm just saying it's incredibly sad. Kids notice everything. They know who actually cares about them and who is just a selfish hoarder." Toby's ears turned violently red. I wanted the earth to open up and swallow the entire picnic table. My aunt, who treats family drama like it's reality television, chimed in. "Well, family should always help family. That's just biblical." I took a slow sip of my soda, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. I looked directly at Brenda. "I offered to help Toby earn what he wants. I'm teaching him financial literacy. That is helping. That is being a stingy, bitter loner," Brenda spat, smiling like she had just checkmated me. "If you actually cared about your nephew, you'd just buy the damn chair. But you don't know how to love anyone. That's why Maya left you." The mention of my ex-fiancé was a tactical nuke. My brother Mark stared intensely at his paper plate. His jaw clenched so hard, I thought his teeth would shatter. My mother looked at me with pleading eyes, silently begging me to swallow the massive disrespect for the sake of her precious cookout. My father aggressively flipped a burger and muttered, "Let's just all calm down." Something inside my chest snapped. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style explosion. It was a quiet, internal click. The sound of a heavy steel vault, locking shut forever. "Okay," I said, setting my plastic cup down on the wooden table. My voice was eerily calm. "If we are going to sit here and talk about who cares about family, Brenda, can we please discuss the $4,000 you borrowed from me 14 months ago and never paid back?" My mother gasped, clutching her pearls metaphorically and literally. "Liam, what are you doing?" "We're already doing this, Mom," I said, raising my voice just enough to carry over the grill. "Let's not pretend anymore." Brenda's smug smile flickered, replaced by genuine panic. "Oh my God. Are you seriously still obsessing over that? You're psychotic." "Yeah, I am," I said, leaning forward. "Because it was my hard-earned money. It was a medical emergency," she said quickly, looking around at the relatives. "You know that." "And exactly 3 weeks after that medical emergency," I countered, my voice echoing in the silent yard, "you posted a photo shoot on Instagram showing off a brand new $2,500 Prada bag." My aunt gasped like I had just sworn inside a church. My father's eyebrows shot up to his hairline. Mark finally looked up at his wife, his face a mask of utter confusion. Brenda aggressively rolled her eyes. "It was a gift." "From who, Brenda?" I asked, refusing to break eye contact. "Did the medical emergency buy it for you?" Chaos erupted. Relatives started talking over each other in hushed, scandalized whispers. My mother's voice rose an octave, begging everyone to eat the burgers. My cousin muttered something about me being too dramatic. Brenda abruptly stood up, her chair scraping violently against the concrete patio. "You know what? Fine. If you want your stupid little money back so badly, you can have it. But don't act like you aren't thoroughly enjoying humiliating a mother in front of her family." I stared at her, feeling utterly hollow. "I'm not enjoying a single second of this, Brenda. I'm just tired." And that was the absolute truth. I was tired deep in my bone marrow, in that dark place where you finally stop giving a damn if people think you're the villain. I threw my plate in the trash and walked to my car. My mother chased me down the driveway, grabbing my forearm like I was fleeing a crime scene. "Why couldn't you just let it go, Liam?" she pleaded, tears in her eyes. "Why do you have to ruin everything?" "Because it never goes away, Mom," I yelled, pulling my arm free. It just keeps happening. You let her walk all over everyone." She looked at me like I was an alien, a defective son who wouldn't sacrifice his own mental health to keep her living room comfortable. "You're making this much bigger than it actually is." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "No, Mom. I'm finally seeing exactly how big it is." The part I didn't anticipate was what Brenda did online the second she got home. Because, of course, she didn't come to my door to yell at me like a normal, unhinged person. She went for the weapon that costs nothing but inflicts maximum damage. Public internet shaming. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating off my nightstand like it was possessed. I had dozens of messages. Some from distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade, some from high school acquaintances, and several from unknown numbers. The theme was identical. Vague guilt, tripping, aggressive, passive aggression, and the classic line, "Family is family, bro." Against my better judgment, I opened Facebook. And there it was. A massive, multi-paragraph essay written by Brenda, composed like she was auditioning for a Pulitzer in victimhood. She didn't use my exact name, but she didn't need to. She wrote a harrowing tale about a sweet, innocent teenager being ruthlessly punished for wanting a normal childhood. She attached a photo of Toby from 3 years ago, back when he was smaller, wearing an oversized, faded hoodie, making him look destitute. She wrote about how some single men with no responsibilities would rather hoard their wealth like a dragon than help a struggling child. She sprinkled in hyper-specific details about my career in finance and my bachelor lifestyle, framing my lack of a wife as a severe character defect. She even used the phrase, weaponizing his corporate salary against a mother, which sounds utterly deranged, but you would be horrified by what bored suburbanites will believe if you package it with a sad photo of a kid. I sat on my couch in the dark, staring at the glowing screen, feeling my face burn with humiliation. The worst part wasn't the strangers commenting. The worst part was the people I actually knew. People who had eaten at my table, writing things like, "That is so heartbreaking," and "Kids deserve so much better," and "Some men become such bitter incels when they get left at the altar." I typed out a massive response. I attached the screenshots of her demanding the luxury items. I attached the screenshots of her admitting the $4,000 was a loan. I attached the text where she explicitly told Toby to exploit my lack of children. I hovered my thumb over the post button. I wanted to burn her entire social life to the ground. Then I pictured 1-4-year-old Toby logging on and seeing it. I pictured him reading his mother's utter humiliation, seeing my receipts, and watching hundreds of adults turn his private pain into morning entertainment. My stomach violently turned. He didn't ask for a single drop of this poison. So, I deleted it. I deleted everything, locked my phone, and sat in the silence, shaking uncontrollably, feeling like I had just swallowed crushed glass. I didn't feel like a noble hero. I felt trapped. The only way to protect my nephew was to let myself be publicly crucified. At work that day, I tried to compartmentalize. I put on my neutral corporate mask, grabbed my overpriced cold brew, opened my spreadsheets, and did the routine. At 2 p.m., my department supervisor, Sarah, called me into her glass office. She wasn't mean, she was clinically careful, which somehow made the humiliation infinitely worse. "Are you doing all right, Liam?" she asked, folding her hands on her desk. Then she cleared her throat. "A few people in the office saw a concerning post online this morning." Concerned. Right, I knew exactly what she meant. She didn't want to say, "Your sister-in-law is currently painting you as a child, abusing sociopath on the internet." She just wanted to know if my family's radioactive drama was going to spill into the firm's pristine reputation. Corporate doesn't care about your trauma. Corporate cares about liability. My cheeks burned with volcanic heat. "It's a private family dispute, Sarah," I said, the understatement of the century. "It is completely handled and will not affect my work." She gave me a tight, sympathetic HR smile. "Just keep me updated if anything escalates. We have resources if you need them." I walked back to my desk wanting to spontaneously combust. My cubicle neighbor, a guy who constantly inserted himself into everyone's business, leaned over the divider and whispered, "Hey man, is everything okay with your nephew?" I saw the post. I stared at him with dead eyes. Yep, everything is perfect. I stared at my monitors until my retinas ached. Update 2. For the next 2 weeks, living in my body felt like enduring a low-grade fever. Every single notification chime made my heart violently jump against my ribs. Toby started coming over to my apartment more frequently, partly for our financial literacy lessons, partly because my place was dead quiet, and mostly because he desperately didn't want to be in his own house while his mother was rage texting her Facebook army about me. He would sit at my wobbly table doing his algebra homework, and I would watch him physically flinch every time his phone vibrated. His nervous system had already learned that notifications meant psychological warfare. One evening, while eating pizza, Toby refused to look at me. "Is this my fault, Uncle Liam?" he whispered to his crust. I put my slice down immediately. "No." I waited for him to look up, then said it slower. "Toby, absolutely none of this is your fault. The adults are failing, not you." He nodded, but his eyes remained hollow. That is the insidious tragedy of being raised by a manipulator. You are conditioned to assume you are the toxic element before you even understand what toxicity is. Around the same time, Mark started texting me pathetic, half-hearted apologies that felt like putting a Hello Kitty Band-Aid on a compound fracture. "I'm sorry she posted that, man. I'm trying to talk to her." Then an hour later, "Can you just ignore her? Just block her, please." Like ignoring a woman who is actively trying to destroy my reputation in my hometown was just a casual weekend hobby. I finally snapped and sent Mark a novel-length text that I instantly regretted but entirely meant. "You do not get to ask me to ignore the person you have allowed to emotionally terrorize me for years. You do not get to play the neutral peacekeeper while your wife treats me like a human ATM and slanders me to my boss. Step up and be a father, Mark, or stop texting me." He didn't reply for 6 hours. I spent that entire time spiraling, rereading my harsh words, wondering if I was the monster my mother claimed I was. Finally, Mark replied, "I know. I'm sorry. I just don't know how to fix it anymore." That text shattered my anger and replaced it with profound pity. He wasn't just an enabler. He was a hostage drowning in his own living room. He just expected me to be his permanent flotation device. A few days later, Brenda proved she wasn't just throwing a tantrum. She was executing a calculated strike. Toby came over after school, looking deeply uncomfortable. He stood in my kitchen and said, "Mom told me to ask you for your social security number. She said she needs it for some emergency school contact forms." My entire body went ice cold. The blood drained from my face so fast I felt dizzy. I realized in a flash that she likely already had pieces of my identity from 2 years ago, when Mark begged me to help them file their complicated back taxes, and we had spread their documents all over my kitchen table. She was just trying to get the clean current number directly from me to bypass security questions. "What exact forms, Toby?" I asked, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm so I wouldn't traumatize him. He shrugged, looking scared. "I don't know. She just said she strictly needed it today." "You never ever give anyone that number, Toby," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Not even family. Not unless you are sitting in a bank or a government office. Do you understand?" He nodded rapidly. I told her I didn't know it. "Good boy." I breathed. I excused myself, went into my bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bathtub, gripping my hair. I was hyperventilating. If she was asking for my SSN now, it meant she was already in the process of applying for something. 2 mornings later, Toby texted me at 6:30 a.m., begging to meet before school. My stomach plummeted. We met at a dingy local coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and bleach. He slid into the booth looking like a fugitive. "I have something," he whispered, his hands visibly shaking as he pushed his cracked iPhone across the table. It was a text thread with Brenda. It wasn't a mother asking her son for a favor. It was a tactical script. "Say this to Liam," she had written. "Do not mention the loan. If he argues, tell him he's selfish for hoarding money. Remind him he has no kids and no wife to spend it on." My throat constricted. "Did you show your dad this?" Toby shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. "Dad just yells and then goes to his room." "But Uncle Liam, look at the top message. Like, Dad dat." He scrolled up. My blood turned to absolute liquid nitrogen. Brenda had explicitly written, "Just get him to buy the tech stuff. We aren't keeping it. I have a buyer on Marketplace lined up for the chair and the phone. I need the cash by Friday. Stop being so sensitive and just do what I tell you, Toby. You owe me." She wasn't trying to spoil her son. She was using her child to launder electronics through me to pay off a secret debt. "I'm so sorry, Uncle Liam," Toby sobbed quietly into his hands. "Toby, look at me," I said fiercely, grabbing his shoulder. You are the child. You have nothing to apologize for. I took crystal clear photos of every single message with my own phone. The hammer dropped exactly 48 hours later. I was at my desk when my phone aggressively chimed with an alert from Experian. New account inquiry. My heart essentially stopped beating. I hadn't applied for a credit card in 5 years. I immediately dialed the fraud department. The representative on the line asked me a series of security questions that made my skin crawl. Full name. DOB. SSN. Sir, the representative said in a bored clinical voice, someone attempted to open a $15,000 line of credit with Capital One using your social security number, but the residential address provided did not match your file. What address was used? I asked, my vision going blurry with rage. The agent read it out. It was Mark and Brenda's home address. I didn't say a word to my boss. I grabbed my keys, practically sprinted to my car, and drove directly to the local Chase Bank branch. I sat across from a fraud specialist named David, gripping my driver's license like it was a holy relic. David printed out the hard inquiry report. There it was in black and white. My name, my SSN, Brenda's address. I walked out of the bank in a complete fugue state. The only time my documents were ever exposed to her was during that tax session 2 years ago. I remembered her making a huge, performative show of cleaning up the paperwork while Mark and I were in the kitchen getting beers. I wanted to travel back in time and beat myself unconscious. I drove straight to their house. I didn't knock. I pounded on the front door until the wood rattled. Brenda opened the door wearing a plush bathrobe, holding a mug of tea, smiling like she hadn't just committed a state felony. Oh, hey Liam, what a surprise. I shoved the printed Experian report directly into her chest. Explain this. Right now. Her eyes darted to the paper, then back to my face. For one microscopic second, absolute terror flashed in her pupils. Then, the sociopathic mask slid back into place. She feigned total confusion. I have literally no idea what this is, Liam. It is a fraudulent credit application, I roared, stepping into the foyer, forcing her backward. Using my social security number, tied to your home address. She let out that same cruel, mocking laugh. That's ridiculous. It's probably a computer glitch. Or a scammer. Scammers in Russia don't accidentally type in my brother's exact zip code, Brenda, I yelled. She tried to slam the door in my face. I shoved my boot into the doorframe. Yes, it was aggressive. Yes, I was completely unhinged. When someone tries to destroy the financial foundation of your entire life, etiquette goes out the window. Get your foot out of my door, you psycho, she hissed, her face contorting into pure malice. Tell me the truth, I demanded, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. That's when Mark walked out of the home office, wearing sweatpants, looking exhausted. What the hell is going on out here? I practically threw the Experian report at his face. Someone tried to open a 15 grand credit line in my name using your home address, Mark. Tell me your wife didn't do this. Mark stared at the paper. All the color drained from his face. His jaw went slack. Brenda, what is this? Brenda immediately lunged to snatch the paper. It's a mistake! He's being paranoid. He's just trying to frame me because he hates me. And go. Brenda immediately lunged to snatch the paper. I was shaking with so much adrenaline I felt like I was vibrating. I pushed past both of them and marched directly into their open home office. If someone in this house was stealing my identity, I was finding the motive. Liam, stop! Brenda screamed, chasing after me. I started ripping open the unorganized piles of mail stacked precariously on the desk. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for my life. What I found wasn't my life, it was theirs, completely disintegrating. Hidden beneath a pile of old magazines was a stack of unopened, red-stamped envelopes. Final notices. Intent to repossess. Collection warnings. I ripped one open. A secret credit card in Brenda's name, maxed out at $22,000, 90 days past due. I opened another. A personal loan for $18,000, completely defaulted. It was a catastrophic, slow-motion financial apocalypse. Mark stepped into the office behind me. I handed him the stack of red envelopes. I watched my brother's reality shatter in real time. He stared at the massive balances, his hands visibly trembling. Brenda. Mark choked out. his voice sounding like a terrified child. What? What is this? We paid off the cars. We had savings. Brenda crossed her arms defensively, cornered like a rat. It's fine. It's totally under control. I was going to pay it off. It is not under control, Mark screamed. The sound of my passive, beaten-down brother raising his voice was so shocking it made the air in the room feel heavy. How much debt are we in, Brenda? Answer me. She hesitated. That hesitation was the loudest confession I had ever heard. It's not that much, she mumbled, looking away. I let out a maniacal, bitter laugh. Not that much. The exact phrase she used to belittle my money, now being used to minimize the destruction of her own family. I walked out of the house without another word. I sat in my car, locked the doors, and immediately called the credit bureaus to place a hard freeze on my entire identity. I filed an official identity theft report with the FTC. I sat in the driveway doing boring, sterile adult administrative tasks while tears of sheer rage streamed down my face. I thought the worst was over. I caught her. I froze my credit. Mark knew the truth. I thought I could finally breathe. I was so incredibly naive. The harassment began 24 hours later. Brenda showed up at my apartment building on a Sunday afternoon. I heard her in the hallway before I saw her. She was intentionally talking loudly on her cell phone, pacing outside my door, making sure every neighbor on the floor could hear her narrative. He's just refusing to face the damage he caused my family, she yelled to whoever was on the phone. Then, she started pounding on my door. Not a polite knock, a heavy, rhythmic, police-style pounding. I stood in my dark living room, holding my phone, paralyzed. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, cracked her door open and glared at me through the gap, clearly furious that I had brought this trashy drama into our quiet building. Liam, stop hiding like a coward. Brenda screamed through the wood. You are ruining my marriage. I cracked the door, leaving the chain engaged. You need to leave my property right now, Brenda, or I am calling the police. She smiled a terrifying, unhinged smile. Oh, now you're acting scared? After you broke into my house and illegally dug through my private documents? You tried to frame me for identity theft? You literally committed identity theft, I yelled back. Get out of my hallway. You're obsessed with me, she shrieked, her voice echoing down the corridor. You're a lonely, pathetic loser who couldn't even keep Maya from running away, and now you want to destroy my life because you're jealous. I slammed the door, locked the deadbolt, and immediately dialed 911. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped the phone twice. When the police arrived, Brenda executed a flawless, Oscar-worthy performance. The second the uniform stepped off the elevator, she transformed into a fragile, weeping victim. She put her hand over her heart and told the officer, I'm just trying to check on my brother-in-law. He's been acting very hostile and erratic lately, and I'm just so scared for him. I opened the door and handed the police officer the printed FTC fraud report, the Experian inquiry, and the printed screenshots of her texts to Toby. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, this woman attempted to open a $15,000 line of credit in my name 2 days ago. She is now harassing me at my home. I want her removed for trespassing. The officer looked at the paperwork, then looked at Brenda. The fake tears instantly vanished from her face. She glared at me with pure, unfiltered hatred. Ma'am, you need to leave the premises immediately or you will be arrested for trespassing, the officer said sternly. She turned on her heel, but before she walked to the elevator, she leaned toward my door and whispered, loud enough for me to hear but too quiet for the cop. This isn't over, you lonely freak. I spent the next 3 weeks living in a state of absolute paranoia. I changed every password I owned. I changed my security questions because I realized my mother's maiden name was common knowledge. I started leaving my apartment through the underground parking garage to avoid the lobby. Then came Thanksgiving. My mother, completely deep in the trenches of denial, insisted on hosting Thanksgiving dinner as a family. Mark arrived looking like a walking corpse, hollow-eyed and utterly defeated. Toby clung to his dad's side, refusing to speak. Brenda had been explicitly uninvited by my father. But of course, Brenda doesn't respect boundaries. Halfway through the turkey, the doorbell rang. My mother, conditioned by decades of avoiding conflict, opened the door. Brenda stood on the porch in the freezing cold, holding a wrapped present, crying hysterically. I just want to see my son on Thanksgiving, she wailed, loud enough for the entire cul-de-sac to hear. Mark stood up from the table, his chair crashing to the floor. He marched to the front door, his face like stone. You need to leave, Brenda. Now. She dropped to her knees on the porch. You're keeping my baby from me. You're abusing me. Liam is brainwashing you. My mother started to cry, her hands fluttering. Mark, maybe just let her in for 5 minutes to calm down. No, I roared, stepping into the hallway. Stop validating her insanity, Mom. She is a criminal. Brenda's eyes locked onto mine, flashing with demonic rage. This is all your fault. You bitter, miserable faggot. No wonder Maya threw up when she looked at you. The entire house went dead silent. The slur hung in the air like toxic gas. My father, who hadn't raised his voice in 20 years, calmly walked to the kitchen counter, picked up his phone, and dialed the police. Arthur, what are you doing? My mother panicked. I am removing the trash from my porch, Helen, my father said coldly. When the police arrived, Mark showed them the temporary separation agreement he had filed that morning. They escorted Brenda off the property while she screamed obscenities that made the neighbors turn on their porch lights. We ate cold turkey in absolute silence. It was the best Thanksgiving I've ever had. Over the next 6 months, Mark's life was systematically dismantled. He had to sell the house to cover the catastrophic secret debt Brenda had accumulated. He moved into a depressing, cramped 2-bedroom apartment. He got temporary primary custody of Toby because Brenda was deemed highly unstable and was facing a pending investigation for the credit fraud. Toby spent most of his weekends at my place. He kept working his neighborhood jobs. One Saturday morning, he walked into my apartment, absolutely beaming. He slammed a receipt onto my kitchen table. I did it, Uncle Liam, he said proudly. I looked at the paper. He had purchased the $600 premium gaming chair with his own debit card. How much did you save up in total? I asked, grinning. $2,200, Toby said, puffing his chest out. The rest is staying in my savings account, like we planned. I felt a massive lump form in my throat. I pulled the kid into a hug. I am so incredibly proud of you, Toby. You earned every single penny. He hugged me back tightly. Thank you for not treating me like I was stupid. I thought that was the end of the story. The villain was banished. The nephew learned a valuable life lesson, and my identity was secure. But I promised you a twist. And it is the kind of twist that completely destroys your understanding of reality. The final twist. 2 weeks ago, the divorce proceedings between Mark and Brenda entered the legal discovery phase. Subpoenas were issued for all digital communications, texts, and emails to untangle the financial nightmare she had created. On a rainy Tuesday night, Mark showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked completely shattered. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man who had just watched a ghost murder his family. He was holding a thick manila folder of printed text messages provided by his lawyer. He walked into my living room, bypassed the couch, and literally collapsed onto his knees on my rug. He started sobbing. Violent, agonizing, full-body heaves. Mark, what is it? What happened? Did she take Toby? I panicked, rushing over to him. He violently shook his head, pressing his face into his hands. I'm so sorry, Liam. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I am a monster. I froze. What are you talking about? He reached into the folder with trembling hands and pulled out a stack of printed text messages dating back almost 4 years. He handed them to me. I looked at the top page. It was a conversation between Brenda and Maya, my ex-fiancée, the woman who abandoned me a month before our wedding. I started reading. Brenda, the 12th of October 2020. If you don't pack your bags and leave Liam by Friday, I am sending the photos to Helen and Arthur. I will post the video on Facebook. I will ruin you. Maya, the 12th of October 2020. Please, Brenda. It was one drunken mistake. Mark initiated it. We were both drunk. Please don't destroy Liam's life. He doesn't deserve this. Brenda, the 12th of October 2020. I don't give a damn about Liam. Mark is my husband. You slept with my husband in Liam's own bed during the bachelor party weekend. You are going to break off the engagement, leave the state, and never speak to Liam again. If you tell him the truth, I will burn your reputation to the ground. You have 48 hours. The pages slipped out of my hands and scattered across the floor. The air was entirely sucked out of my lungs. The room started spinning. I looked down at my brother, who was curled into a fetal position on my rug, weeping. You, I choked out, my vocal cords feeling like they were tearing. You slept with Maya? Mark couldn't even look at me. It was the weekend of your bachelor party. You went to bed early. We stayed up drinking. I don't even know how it happened, Liam. I swear to God. Brenda found out. She found the texts on my phone. She cornered Maya. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. The sudden, unexplained abandonment. The vague note Maya left. The utter devastation that took me 3 years of intensive therapy to survive. It wasn't cold feet. It was my own brother. "Why didn't you tell me?" I screamed. A raw, animalistic sound that tore from the bottom of my soul. I grabbed Mark by the collar of his jacket and hauled him upward. "Why did you let me think it was my fault?" "Because Brenda owned me," Mark wailed. Tears and snot running down his face. "She held it over my head every single day for 4 years, Liam. That's why I let her spend the money. That's why I let her run up the debt. That's why I always told you to just give her what she wanted. If I ever told her no, she threatened to tell you the truth and destroy our family." The flawless, horrifying logic of the last 4 years suddenly clicked into place like a loaded gun. Why did Mark never stand up for me? Because Brenda was holding a nuclear bomb over his head. Why did Brenda feel so insanely entitled to my money? Because she viewed it as hush money. She felt she was owed my salary as compensation for staying quiet about her husband's infidelity. Why did she constantly mock me for being a bitter bachelor who got left at the altar? Because she was the one who orchestrated the abandonment, and she got off on the sadistic irony of it all. She wasn't just a greedy sister-in-law. She was a sociopathic puppeteer who had destroyed my future marriage, weaponized my brother's cowardice, and then tried to steal my identity when the well finally ran dry. I let go of Mark's collar. He slumped back onto the floor, a pathetic, broken shell of a man. I didn't hit him. I didn't scream anymore. The rage completely evaporated, leaving behind a cold, desolate wasteland in my chest. "Get out of my apartment, Mark," I whispered. "Liam, please, get out of my apartment before I kill you," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. He scrambled to his feet, leaving the documents on the floor, and ran out the door. I haven't spoken to my brother since that night. I forwarded the printed text to my parents. My mother had a nervous breakdown and had to be sedated by her doctor. My father told Mark he is no longer welcome in their home. Brenda is currently facing federal charges for identity theft and wire fraud. Because I filed the FTC report and pushed for prosecution, the district attorney picked up the case. She will likely serve actual prison time. I still see Toby. I pick him up from school twice a week, and we go over his savings notebook. He knows his parents are getting divorced, and he knows they both did terrible things. But I refuse to let him pay the price for their sins. He is a good kid who survived a war zone. I check my Experian credit report every single night before I go to sleep. It's a trauma response, but it keeps me grounded. I reached out to Maya on LinkedIn last week. I just sent a message saying, "I know everything. I don't forgive you, but I understand why you ran. Have a good life." She read it, but didn't reply. That's enough closure for me. If you are waiting for the part where I say I forgive my brother because family is family, you are reading the wrong story. Forgiveness is a myth invented by guilty people to escape the consequences of their own betrayals. Some bridges aren't meant to be repaired. Some bridges are meant to be burned, so the monsters can never cross over to you again.